So aside from the reason I briefly mentioned last slide, there are a number of other reasons why younger people are more disproportionately represented. Younger people have more know-how when it comes to using the newer technology. They also tend to have better computer and internet access. If someone is older, they have been married, have had kids, and are divorced, widowed, or single, figuring out their sexuality may not be as big a priority as it might have been when they were younger. A person can only hold out so much hope that they are going to find an answer before eventually giving it up and they stop looking. Poll, romantic and relational attraction. The wording on this poll is a bit confusing. I contemplated changing it, but because of taking it from Avon, I wanted to stay true to how it was phrased. Asexuals are defined by a lack of sexual attraction, but many people on Avon, in addition to identifying as asexual, identify themselves as hetero-romantic, homo-romantic, bi-romantic, pan-romantic, or aromantic, to signify who they are interested in having a romantic relationship with. So hetero-romantic, 42.47%, homo-romantic, 11.17%, bi-romantic, 23.10%, aromantic, 15.06%, other changing attraction, 8.21%. 1,182 people answered the poll. What else do we know? Beyond what I've talked about so far, we know very little for certain. Some of the studies that have been done suggest that more racial and ethnic minorities are asexual, but this could possibly be attributed to sampling bias, but we won't know for sure until more research is done. Poll, have you been mistaken as homosexual? 53.42%, bisexual 12.33%, heterosexual 31.51%, always known to be asexual 2.74%, and 52 people answered the poll. It is not 100% clear to what degree asexuals face the type of prejudice, discrimination, and violence targeted at gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transsexuals. But this poll would seem to suggest it is not impossible that asexuals face the same problems as other members of the queer community, and not necessarily because of being a known asexual, but because of being perceived as being homosexual or bisexual. Personally, it would be of interest, of all the people who answered this poll, how many people have come out to friends and relatives about being asexual, and how many of them have just left it untouched. If it is possible for asexuals to be mistaken as having a sexual orientation different from the one they have, this implies that conventional gaydar doesn't work. So how is it possible for an asexual to be mistaken as homosexual or bisexual? For one thing, I don't think we mentally have the capacity to deal with ambiguity. We have a compulsive need to be able to label people. Many of us would be paralyzed and stuck in our tracks, unable to decide anything unless we are able to make predictions and forecast what other people are thinking and doing. If we cannot identify what someone's sexual orientation is, then until proven otherwise, many of us would assume that they are heterosexual, or seeing how they are not interested in the opposite sex, we assume they are homosexual. Those are really our only two choices, since many people cannot conceive of asexuality being a possible answer, and it is really difficult to mentally judge someone as bisexual. Just you see them for 5 minutes. Are they what is their sexual orientation unless you really have known the person. So people cannot conceive of a person being asexual because they don't know it is an option. A second reason why asexuals could be mistaken as homosexual or bisexual is by the fact many asexuals still pursue romantic relationships. A few slides back I showed you a slide showing that a significant number of asexuals still have an inclination toward pursuing romantic relationships. Walking down the street hand in hand with someone of the same sex for many people would be strongly indicative that both people are homosexual. If anyone has taken women's studies classes or sociology classes pertaining to sex, gender, and sexuality, then you would be familiar with the concept of doing gender. From this perspective, feminine and masculine traits are not connected to your biological anatomy, but it's connected to conscious choices about how we choose to present ourselves and how we act. From this line of thinking, it becomes clear we could have our sexual orientation misinterpreted based on our conformity or nonconformity to stereotypes, in addition to how we portray our sex. If I were to convincingly dress in drag as a drag king by virtue of parading myself around as a man, people by default would likely presume that I am heterosexual and attracted to other women. There is a really great scene from Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, where Elizabeth confronts Jack Sparrow. Elizabeth is trying to find the love of her life, Will Turner, who left to find Jack to save her. Elizabeth walks up to Jack dressed as a man and says something along the lines of, "I've come looking for the man I love." And of course the scene is funny because Jack interprets it as a love proposition from another guy. And we know in fact that it is Elizabeth in drag, and based on the first movie there is this awkward sexual tension between them. Twelfth Night, we have a similar situation where one of the characters is masquerading as a man, and as the play progresses there develops a love triangle. Brokeback Mountain, we have two guys who fall in love and have a sort of sexual liaison together and an ongoing relationship. They eventually go their separate ways and on the surface lead the normal, stereotypical heterosexual life of marrying a woman and having a family. They do what they can to keep their relationship a secret, but it's difficult. So it is only when Alma sees her husband kiss Jack she has grounds for suspecting that something is amiss. So in all honesty, how would anyone have interpreted them as anything less than heterosexual, considering they don't fit what we typically think of as the gay man? Poll. Have you been discriminated against, threatened, or humiliated because of your orientation? 40.64 answered yes, 59.36 answered no, 35 people answered the poll. Again, it isn't clear to what degree asexuals face discrimination and how it compares to other minority groups, but no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, it should not be ignored.